Welcome to the Queens of Moxie, a podcast all about empowering women to reclaim their moxie, their power. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, and I'm the host of this program. Each week, we'll talk with amazing women who have reclaimed their moxie, overcome challenges, and are living their best life. So let's get started. We're here today with Meg, who is a physical therapist who specializes in cranial sacral work, and we have changed her name to protect the privacy of her kids, because today's conversation is about something that parents sometimes go through, and Meg and her son have gotten to the other side of it, and so I wanted to bring her in to talk about what that journey was like. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Meg. She went to Miami of Ohio and majored in zoology, and she really likes the fact that it provided a well-rounded education, because some of the courses that she took, psychology, philosophy, things like that, have really opened her eyes to the work that she's now doing. And so it was an integral part in her journey. She also swam at the collegiate level and has continued that swimming throughout her life. And in college, she did 400 IM, 500 free, 200 free, and 200 fly. So if you know anything about swimming, I personally love to watch the IM, but it's the stroke, all four strokes. And when I said I love it, Meg kind of gave that vomit look face. So it's pretty grueling for the swimmers. Because she swam, she couldn't necessarily put as much effort into her college courses. And so she ended up taking 4 courses, or 16 hours again, at the University of Maryland, and had to get a 4.0 to get into PT school. Then she went to Shenandoah University. She was the second entering class, and she chose that university because they really focus on chronic pain, and she knew that she wanted to work in that field. She got her master's in physical therapy there, and then because she's an overachiever, she had her own business. She had 2 kids, and she decided to go back to Shenandoah University to get her doctorate 7 or 8 years after completing her master's. So super excited to talk to Meg today, and Meg, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, first tell us about this, being a swimmer, and I cheered in college, and so I know that being a collegiate athlete is very demanding. Tell us what that was like. I think swimming is such a demanding, psychologically and physically. It's a sport that requires a lot. So what was that like to do that in college?
Well, it was always nice to have other swimmers. Like, we kind of had our own sorority, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, the people around me, the swimmers around me, were going through kind of the same thing. So we definitely had safety in numbers, I guess. I had never worked that hard, I think, in my life. I remember, like, one of my classes, one of the teachers used to lecture literally right at my desk to try and keep me awake. Mm-hmm. So I just remember, like, sleeping a lot. The swimming also afforded me opportunities that I don't think I would have had. Free tutoring and help with my classes. And because everything was kind of scheduled out for me, it was a very organized situation. I mean, one of our quotes was, "We do more before 8 a.m. than most people do all day." And it really was kind of a military-based, lifestyle. And swimming all 4 years, I believe, like, helped me kind of maintain some level of safety for myself during the years where people were getting absolutely trashed and, falling out of windows and whatever. I really just didn't have that time or luxury to be able to do those things. So I think it really helped me move forward pretty quickly in 4 years.
I taught at NC State University, and I taught 8 a.m. classes a lot of times. And I often had swimmers and football players in my classes, because for the football players, they did all their classes in the morning so they could go to practice in the afternoon. And the swimmers would come with wet hair, red eyes, and lines around their eyes from the goggles. And exactly what you said, they had already had their complete workout before class. And having been an athlete myself, I know that you have very limited time to get your work done and to do other things. And so for me, I became very efficient, and I was one of the only cheerleaders that got on the dean's list, because before practice, if I had time, I would bring my homework and I would sit and do the homework while I was waiting for practice to start, because time management was such an important factor. And so I hear what you're saying, and for me too, I couldn't get involved in all of the typical college experiences because I had to weigh in every week, for one.
Oh my gosh, yes. The weigh-ins.
Yes. And there was no freshman 15.
Nope, not at all. Not unless it was muscle mass.
No, even still,
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did our body fat composition at the beginning of the season, the end of the season, but no, you had 3 pounds. You go up or down 3 pounds.
Wow.
Which, you drink a lot of water and that can make a difference. So, so it definitely created, it also created some unhealthy eating habits for some of the girls. Luckily, I wasn't one of them, but
we had quite a few of our swimmers actually have to quit because of anorexia.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was during a time where 17% body fat was considered not normal. Like I would hover around 11 to 12% body fat, and that was considered good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mine was 10.03.
Yeah.
And we did the hydrostatics, so it was it was accurate.
They don't do that now, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It does create some real challenges and lifelong concerns for some of the women. So, you got through all of this and you started your career, and tell me a little bit about, I know what cranial sacral therapy is, but I only know because you've treated me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what it was before, but it is something so different from what a lot of people know, but so incredibly effective. So give us a snapshot of what that means.
Well, the theory is that, which is actually becoming more and more proven as we get more and more understanding of how the brain works. But the theory is that with the brain and the spinal cord being so intimately connected, that it's cranial sacral, like basically you're dealing with both the understandings of the brain as well as the connection of the brain to the rest of the body through the spinal cord. So the theory is, and this was done by an osteopath by the name of Sutherland in the 50s, I think, when he would be assisting somebody with... So cranial sacral therapy originated with a gentleman by the name of Sutherland around in the 1950s. He was an osteopathic physician who was assisting in a surgery, spinal surgery actually, and he was holding back the spinal cord for the surgeon to be able to remove the disc. And when he was holding it back, he had such amazing manual skills that he actually could feel the ebb and the flow of the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the fluid that encases the brain and then travels down the spinal cord. And he thought, well, that's interesting. It had its own kind of respiration, so to speak. So there was its own little pulse in this whole system. It wasn't a breathing pulse. It wasn't a heart rate pulse. It was definitely its own pulse of expanding and contracting of the pressure within the brain and the spinal cord by the production and then stopping of the production of the cerebral spinal fluid itself. So he thought about that and decided to see if he could actually feel it in the head. And he said that he could. And so what he started to do is he started to check people's heads and say, well, maybe it's just this person or maybe it's that person. And then he realized he could feel it in just about almost everybody's head. What he was feeling, we still don't know. But the idea was that he started to notice asymmetries within the ebb and flow and pulse of the cranium, as well as within the sacrum. And so what he started to do is try to wiggle and move and correct the asymmetries of this expansion and contraction of the skull. And as he would do so, people would get relief of various and sundry different things. Again, the theory is still kind of discombobulated, and we still don't know why or what's happening. His belief was that there were some sort of receptors within the skull bones themselves that when they expanded to a certain point, that they would signal the cessation of stoppage of this fluid production. The fluid production would then be absorbed into the system, and so then somehow it would turn back on again. Again, we don't know where those receptors are. We know it happens. Like, it's been proven that there's, fluid flow, and it definitely has a specific pulse for sure. But they just don't know how or why. So that's kind of where I began. And actually, I met a practitioner of cranial sacral therapy in school. So she was one of the clinical affiliates, like one of the people that we could go down and work with. And I just became completely absorbed into that concept, into the concept of listening to bodies rather than doing to bodies, into the concept of paying attention to what they needed instead of trying to tell them what they needed. I guess it goes a little further than that with the cranial sacral therapy. It gets more into an understanding of kind of the whole inner physician piece, right? People have their own ability to help themselves, their intuition, their gut feeling or whatever. And if we as practitioners can tap into that inner physician, then all we have to do is listen and help guide the patient to help themselves. So it's very empowering, not only for me, but for the patient, because they then learn how to take care of themselves instead of having to rely on others. And I found it just, amazingly satisfying. Learning so much about people and their bravery and their ability to reconnect with their bodies, being part of that journey, part of that experience. I mean, it really is touching to see somebody move into a sense of vulnerability because they're willing to go the extra mile to learn to help themselves. It's amazing. It really is. And then to be able to help them help themselves, and for them to be able to recognize that they can do this work is, that's a win-win. I mean, it really is. It's a win-win.
And you've been doing it how many years now?
Well, I've been practicing since I started. I've been practicing since 1994 as a licensed physical therapist. And I've never stopped practicing that type of work because it's so effective. Now, my colleagues call it woo-woo, right? Because it's kind of out of the norm. So I have to kind of sometimes sneak it in on people without them knowing what I'm doing. But when you find that people that kind of are all in, the transitions that they make are not only physical, but emotional, confidence, their levels of understanding, having that pain removed, chronic pain removed that they've never had before, and by themselves. I mean, they get to learn how to do that by themselves. It's just such a transition, really. It's impressive.
Now, you talk about how they do it themselves, but I will also say that you are there almost as if you're creating a pathway or space,
yes,
for people to do this, and also the instruction in how to tap into that, or how to be receptive to that, or how to listen. And it's not that you're telling them; it's you're helping them to understand what it is that they're feeling, what it is that their body is doing. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is the whole idea of energy. We're all made up of energy.
Yes.
And I think some people are much more receptive or able to sense somebody else's energy. So tell me a little bit about what that energy work is.
So, it's true. If you walk into a room and there's two people standing facing off and at each other and their fists are clenched, you can feel the tension in the room. Like you could feel that. Mm-hmm. Just as when you see a child running to their parent, you can feel the security and the safety that child and that parent feel together. My child is safe, the child feels safe, right? And so as a therapist in cranial sacral therapy, our job is to create a safe place where the people, patients, clients, whatever, feel safe enough to be able to do this work, where they don't feel like they're being pressured, or they don't feel like they have to, or they don't feel like I'm going to, push them into something. They have to feel safe and comfortable, not only with the practitioner, but with the space to be able to do this work. And so that's that energy, right? The other energy is an interesting one. It's that the patient's, the person's concept of what's happening within them. And, the fMRIs are showing that emotion and creativity is so important within the body and how the body functions. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is definitely a stress-based disease. Headaches and tension is definitely stress-based. And so, how you hold yourself, how you hold that energy of who you are, and where you hold it or choose to hold it, can either stop the energy flow. When you deal with people who have lost a limb, they talk about phantom limb pain or an itch or something. And we know that through creativity, if you use a mirror and mirror the solid leg, you can actually make a change. You can literally have the patient reach down, like let's say they've lost their right leg. They can reach down on their left leg and show in the mirror that they're scratching their right leg, and they can actually ease that itch. That's how unbelievably creative the brain is. So once you get the person down the path of recognizing that they can make these changes within themselves, then it really becomes so easy. All you have to do is just ask the right questions, right? Like, well, what does that feel like? Well, is that supposed to feel that way? And as soon as they comprehend the sense that, oh, well, is it supposed to feel that way? Or is this normal for me? And then when they can perceive normal and recognize that it's abnormal, you got them, right? Well, let's make that abnormal normal. Not only to your body, but maybe also to your brain too. Mm-hmm. So that's that kind of energy movement, I would say, internal energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that you've talked about with me is not for me to do it yet, because apparently I'm not ready, is that idea of when you've built that trust with a patient, and you do whatever that work is that really unfolds everything and quite literally can take people to the ground as they unpack all of that. Because I'm so fascinated by it, I want you to explain it.
Well, so this is kind of like, this is a little out of the physical therapy realm and more into the realm of, woo-woo, I guess, is what, most of my clients would call it. Not clients, but my peers. But it's the concept of somato-emotional release, right? So let's say you get into a car accident.
Don't know anything about that. Which is why Meg is seeing me, just so y'all know.
And if you get into a car accident, and like I had many years ago, I had a patient who was getting ready to turn into, I'll just use any general store, a McDonald's, say, for breakfast. And she was rear-ended by somebody who didn't notice that she was slowing down, had turned her signal on, and was getting ready to turn, and literally slammed into the back of her. The woman then came out of her car, came over to my patient who had gotten hit, and started yelling at her. Every time, and in the process, she had hurt her neck. Every time she went past that McDonald's,
yep,
her neck would just be absolutely on fire.
Sure.
For the first 3 months, she couldn't even go, like she would take a different direction. Mm-hmm. She couldn't even go past that McDonald's. Mm-hmm. every time she thought about it, her neck would hurt.
Yep.
And so what happens is in the brain, and this is also proven, is that when you attach an emotion to a body part, you create a connection of emotion and pain to that body part in the central nervous system. You make a new pathway.
Right.
And so getting rid of that pathway in whatever way that you possibly can is of utmost importance for that system to rectify and heal itself.
Yeah.
So we call it somato-emotional release, in the sense that you can take the body through the process to let the brain know that going through that process doesn't hurt anymore or is okay.
Yeah.
And then for some reason the brain's like, well, that makes perfect sense. And then poof, it's gone. It's
amazing.
Really bizarre.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked about all of this really, really cool stuff, I'm going to shift gears completely, and I'm going to talk about parenting. As I said earlier, you've got 2 kids, Sam, who is 19, and Chris, who is 17. And when Sam was in high school, he started doing things that a lot of kids do, but it became problematic. And you and your husband took some pretty radical steps to make sure that the path he was on was going to be the one he needed to be on. So can you walk us through the process of when it all started and what happened? Yeah, big breath.
Yeah. My son was unique from the get-go. He was a difficult child. Colicky for 6 months, unable to nurse, unable to eat until 9 months, like solid foods. When he would teeth, it would bother him so much that he could only ever sleep 2 hours at a time. And it wouldn't just be one tooth, it would be like 2 to 3 weeks worth of teeth where he was sleeping 2 hours at a shot and then wake up in the night. And, God, anyway, so, complicated from the beginning, difficult to understand, hard to interact with other kids, not really perceptive of his effects on others, and yet super, super understanding of and caring of people that he knew. Just sensitive, really. As he got older, once we had him in school, like even preschool, I had to become his advocate very quickly. Teachers would second guess him or see him as a problem child or somebody who should be disciplined because he wouldn't sit still or he wouldn't do what was supposed to be done. I mean, the worst teacher actually was a Montessori teacher, where I thought it was safe because the whole concept of Montessori is to allow the child to do what they needed to do in the arena that they were developing. And this woman was constantly trying to get him to do what she wanted him to do. And telling, she would start the parent-teacher communications with, "Oh, yeah, Sam." And thank God for my psychology, because I literally had to turn it around and say, "Oh, I hear he's reading now." Or, "Oh, I understand he's doing amazing math problems." Like, I literally had to change her opinion of my child. So, he wasn't an easy kid. The teachers that he had up until 6th grade accommodated him beautifully. I would talk to them, we would have a conversation, but as he got older and as the teachers started to prepare him for high school, there was less coddling, I guess, and more demanding. And the ability to understand that he was, he had a diagnosis of ADHD by then, they had an understanding. I would write a letter every year to explain to them. I guess they just cared less. And I don't fault the teachers. I mean, maybe it's the system where there were just more students.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So by the time he got to high school, for him, it was a free-for-all. Trying to find his way. He was always the smartest kid in class because his dad was super smart and could help him with his homework. Mm-hmm. He wasn't the smartest, but he could hang with the smart kids. When high school came, he didn't really want his dad helping him. He wanted to do it on his own. And what happened is he failed. I even started him on like basic normal courses. Like I didn't put him in the top courses. We just had like a simple coursework, and he would still get in trouble. Like he wouldn't bring in his homework, and he didn't want to be reminded. And he was exceptionally talented in music, but he didn't want to apply himself in ways. And as I look back on it now, I recognize he was just getting more and more and more anxious about the pressures that were being placed on him until, of course, he turned to pot. Mm-hmm. Right? And believe me, I'm grateful that it was only just pot.
Right.
Holy cow. Like, he could have jumped on a whole bunch of different bandwagons.
Right.
But he has a processing speed disorder, which is what threw him. So he would be sitting in class for the first half an hour, and he would slowly lose his ability to track what the teacher was saying because his processing speed was slow. Mm-hmm. And because of his ADHD, he would get distracted. Mm-hmm. And because he would get distracted, he would start like zoning out.
Right.
And then because of his ADHD, he would just start speaking out randomly. And so he would get in trouble with the teacher.
Right.
And so then the students would laugh at him. Mm-hmm. And so the students didn't want to be around him because he was then labeled a troublemaker. Or they would constantly be yelling at him to tell him to stop or don't or whatever. And so, all the positive feedback that he had up until that grade, like just poof, went out the window.
Right.
And then once he started turning to pot, he started turning to the kids that smoked pot, mm-hmm. who were probably all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And then he became belligerent, defiant, turned against his parents, listened more to his friends than his parents, started smoking more and more, got it into school, got suspended, crashed his car, got a DUID, got suspended again. And this whole time, I've got a sniffer, man. This whole time I've been catching him with pot, yelling at him, telling him, getting him into counseling. He was in counseling this whole time, not really interested in doing the work, but somehow getting better. Like, I'm not sure, like, he would just be better for a couple of days and then crash and burn again, probably because he started smoking pot again. Until finally one day, the first time ever, we did not take him on a vacation with us because we didn't trust him. And I'm sitting in the castle that Christopher Columbus had asked Queen Isabella for money to go to the United States, just in awe. And my telephone rings, and it's the high school telling me that my son has yet again been suspended from high school for smoking pot. So I called him that evening. And I think what turned it, to be honest, was that his grandmother was there. He had to pull his grandmother into school. The woman who was his, unconditional love. And tell her that he got in trouble. And I feel like that was the turning point. And he said, "Mom, I'm in trouble. And I don't know how to fix this." And I said, "Well, are you ready for me to fix this?" And he said yes. And within a week, he was, I had the support system behind him. I had his counselor refer me to a place that he knew. And he was on a plane to Colorado for a wilderness program 1 week before COVID hit. If I had waited a week, he wouldn't have been able to go. He would have been stuck here. It was 13 weeks in that program. And he dealt with a lot of stuff. The counselor believed that he needed more help. His desire after the program was to graduate from high school. And because of COVID, there were hardly any programs open or available. And literally 2 weeks before he was to graduate from the wilderness program, a program in New Hampshire opened up. That was a therapeutic boarding school. He went there because he said he wanted to graduate from high school. And within 3 months' time, hated it and decided that he was going to come home and stay home and do his schooling and graduate from high school from home. The exact path that we had tried to do with him in his junior year, he completed. And he graduated from the therapeutic boarding school with a 4.0.
Yeah. But it took...
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So many books, so many counselors, so much... Like I was so grateful for my patients because I would just open to them about everything that I was going through. And sure enough, 6, 7, 8 of my patients knew other people who had gone through this. I had so much unbelievable support from the people that I was supposed to support. Because I'll tell you, it's a lonely journey. It's super lonely.
Yeah, because you see the Facebook posts or you hear the people talking, we all want to put our best foot forward, and we put our highlight reel out there. And I think that it's important for us all to remember that that's a highlight reel.
Yeah. Well, and I don't, you talk about a safe place, right? You talk about trust between two people. We lived in a neighborhood where, I had no one. I was ostracized from the neighborhood. I wasn't a full-time work, because my child was difficult from the get-go, and because I knew from undergraduate that I'm not capable of doing 2 major things at any one time. I cannot swim for 20 hours a week and school for 16 hours a week and have them both happen at the quality that I would want.
Right.
Either my grades suffered or my swimming suffered. Truly. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I could work part-time and stay with my kids part-time. And that put me in a space where I wasn't in any group.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the stay-at-home moms group that lived in my neighborhood, and I wasn't in the full-time workers moms group either. And so finding those people. Yeah. I was so grateful that I was working, that I could find those people.
Right.
But they weren't parents of kids my age.
Right.
They were parents, been there, done that.
Right.
The wisdom and the knowledge. That's what helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think so often we do feel like everybody else is kind of together, and I really don't. Oh my God. I'm like, I'm a hot mess, And you know this, I feel so strongly about the importance of having a tribe.
Yeah.
And having people who you can trust, and they trust you, and you create that environment where you can have these real conversations.
Absolutely. The cranial sacral therapy, they do group therapy sessions. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they talk about is we heal with others. Mm. Cranial sacral therapy works because it's 2 people working together for the same goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
We heal with others.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. So Sam did the wilderness program, did the boarding school, graduated. Did he graduate from the local high school then, or did he?
He graduated from the therapeutic boarding school.
Okay.
Yeah, he just transferred all the credits that he had, and we had somehow, that little stinker had maintained a decent GPA. He graduated, I think, with a 3.8 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, smart kid,
Right.
foolish choices, right? And so then he chose to take a gap year, which meant he would work. And he learned some pretty deep life lessons about friendship, about managers, and the pluses and minuses of working a $15 an hour job. He learned about business. He learned about, life. And then now he's chosen to try his hand at college. So he's at the community college trying to earn a business degree. His goal is to try and become a business owner. So, yeah. Not there yet, but heck of a lot closer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, I think we're all, as parents, we're all like terrified of our children going down the wrong path and not being able to help them, and seeing the train wreck coming and going, I don't know, like there must have been periods where you knew you couldn't take over, because if you did, it would still fail. He had to get to that place where he recognized, I need help. What did you do for yourself? How did you get through that?
Well, I would do my own counseling for sure.
Yeah.
It was hard. I feel like I just kind of zoned out. Like I just, like in swimming, where you just, it's the same pool. It's the same black mark on the floor. It's the same flip turn. And it's over and over and over again. And you wake up and you go and you get in the pool and you swim. And that's what I did. I just kept going. Like you just, I guess, grit, I mean, you just kept going. And then eventually it got to a point where I could swim again. Exercise is my jam. And I've tried to exercise in the past. I've tried to do all sorts of different things, but when I'm in the water, I'm free. So for however little bit of time, I think for the most part, that's probably what saved me, is I was able to get back in the water again. My jam.
Right. Well, everybody has their own.
Yes.
It could be walking in nature. It could be petting your dog. It could be mindfulness and meditation. It could be a wide art. It could be singing. It could be anything. But I think knowing how to connect with yourself and to quiet your mind and to give yourself that respite.
Yeah.
That resting in the pause.
Yeah. And I was lucky to have a partner, my husband, who would allow me to do whatever it was that I needed to do to make that happen.
Yeah.
So again, healing with others together. Our marriage took a toe blow, boy. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And I think that is something that people need to understand, that anytime you have a crisis, whatever it might be, it's going to take a toll, and it's going to take work to get through it. Initially you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
That same mentality of get in the pool, swim, do the flip turn, keep going. With life, you were doing everything you could to just keep your head above water.
Yeah.
Literally,
yeah.
Yeah, literally. and your sons and your daughters and your husbands, and the whole family is impacted by this, I'm sure. And now that you're on the other side, now you're trying to get to that place where you're thriving.
Yep. Yes.
Where you're looking at everything and going, whew, I could take a deep breath again.
Yeah. Yeah. With him, it was a long tunnel. Like it was a 19-year tunnel. Raising children isn't easy. And I wish I had neither one of my sisters had kids. And so I wish I had, if you can find somebody that you can relate to early on, and maintain that friendship, I think that would have been lovely.
Yeah. Well, and I do believe that there are, there's a saying, and I'm not going to get it right, but, people come into your life for different reasons. Some come for a season, some come for a lifetime, and I think that's important too, that there are people who are going to come in and it might be that they're teaching you a lesson. It may be that they're there for the moment.
Yeah.
And that moment could be to bring you joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely have had some of those friendships that were,
Yes.
They didn't stand the test of time, but boy, they were fun when they lasted.
No.
And they gave me an outlet. Like I'm thinking about when I first got divorced, I had a group of women that when my kids were with their dad, we would get together and we would listen to music and drink wine, and we were loud and silly and some of them are still friends and some of them aren't, and that's okay.
They come and go.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there has always been a tribe of some sort.
Experiences.
Yeah. And I think that.
And I think my patients did that for me.
Yeah.
Like I would be going through something, and then I would have a patient that would express that they were going through something similar or had. You're right. That would help me through. Mm-hmm. Transient for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But still there.
And effective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're part of Queens of Moxie.
Woohoo!
and so, and truly, and for you guys listening out there, when I turned 50, I had a group of women go to the beach just to celebrate my birthday for no other reason. And Meg was really nervous about coming. And I begged her to come. And luckily, someone else that we'll be hearing from later, Latrice, convinced her to come and dragged her along. And I think, Meg, if you're comfortable with me sharing this, it's been difficult. Sometimes women are catty and aren't, like for me, I know I'm a lot. I fill up a room. I own that. I am a lot. I am not for everybody. But what I have decided and embraced is that I add value the way I am.
Yeah.
And so do you. And so does every woman out there. And so, I think that weekend at the beach was transformational for all of us.
Nice. Yeah. For me, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I realized that obviously I fill a room as well, but even you and I and the other people in there that fill rooms, like we all share. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big difference, is recognizing that the room is big enough to hold all of us.
Yes.
And I think with women, it's hard to know, I don't know, like who you can share with and who you can't, or when it's okay to fill a room and share. I guess, I don't know, like is it that some people don't know how to share, or I don't know. But even if you can fill a room, there's still plenty of space.
Yeah. Well, and I had a conversation with my teenager the other day, and they were saying how they're too much for people. And I said, I'm too much for people. But it's not that you're too much for people. It's that they're not your right people.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I was so glad you came. Not just because I love having you around and I enjoy your company, but also I was so grateful that you were able to hear and feel and know that you are valuable, that you are loved, that you are amazing, that people enjoy your company, and that you do have all these women who love and support you. Mm. And what was amazing about that weekend is, like, next to nobody had met each other beforehand.
Yeah.
Only a couple people had met, and there wasn't like, oh, these are a group of friends from elementary school. No, they were all women, all of the women from different parts of my life brought together, and we just had this remarkable, wonderful time. And like I said, I was just so glad that you left knowing that you've got a tribe and we're here for you.
Absolutely.
And that you have value.
Yeah, that was important for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time, but reflecting back on your time Sam and your life journey from the discipline and rigor of swimming to having your own business to doing cranial sacral work and how it all connects together, and then the challenges that Sam had to overcome and you as his parent had to walk beside him. What would be something that you would advise or say to the women listening to this podcast?
Positive feedback. Find what that child does well. Insist that they do it well and help them take their strength and apply it to their weaknesses. Criticizing my son hurt him, but complimenting, not like, oh, you're such a wonderful child. No, but like, hey, you know what? This is something you do really well. Let's use this to help the other things. Or I remember sitting in the car one day and my son was like, Mom, I'm not a nice person. And I'm like, yes, you are. And you always have been. You're just not a nice person right now. That your support of them, I think, wins out. Or at least it did with my son and my daughter, for that matter. So, I don't know, just keep finding the best in them and bringing it out.
And what about you as a woman, as a mom?
I had a picture on my desk for many, many, many times of a bird with a frog in its mouth. And the frog has its little arms sticking out of the bird's beak because he's not quite down yet, grabbing a hold of the neck of the bird and choking it. And the underneath it says, don't ever give up. And I think, I hate to say this, but, if you keep trying, even if it's wrong, they'll see that you're trying. And if it's wrong, then not to do that next time and to try something else. Just never give up, right? Never give up.
Okay, one more thing. What do you recommend women do to nurture themselves and take care of themselves in times of difficulty?
Well, obviously, if you have a tribe, right? Like, trust in them, right? Find something that you love and take time to do it. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Such great points. All of it. And I so appreciate you being willing to come and talk with us today and to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, story of my life.
Yes.
I mean, vulnerability helps.
Yeah.
It opens up communications, like, and what is it of you when you tell your story, right? The only reason why I'm being so secretive is my son isn't quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's his story too.
Indeed.
And so, your kids are about the same age as my kids.
Yeah.
And went to school together. And so I've known your kids, this whole time. And, they have, it's okay to share your message without sharing your real name and your kids' real names, because it's honoring them while still helping others.
Agreed.
And so I so appreciate you taking time and sharing your story with us, because I think that there are going to be a lot of women out there who this resonates with, and who are going to take a deep breath and go, okay, Meg could do it. I can too.
Well, thanks. Thanks for offering to let me share my story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. Each week we come to you with amazing women who have overcome obstacles, who are living their best life and reclaiming their moxie. We hope to see you next week.